GM friends, thanks for joining DeFi-Logic Symposium Sunday, every Sunday at 1 p.m. Mountain Time. As a member of the DeFi-Logic server, you can join our call every week, request chart reviews, and discuss the call in real time. Link is in the description below. DeFi-Logic is the crypto think tank for better decisions. In today's community call, we'll review daily dose reports for the previous week, starting with the Oopa NFT project, meme mascot to dynamic NFT for our NiFTy Tuesday, a closer look at the Kaspa project and the KAS token for MMA Monday, WWF Wednesday, and Token Audit Thursday, stablecoins bridging traditional finance and cryptocurrency for FA Friday, and finally S&P and DXY for stock and legacy market Saturday. And let's get started. Over to you, Bambrosia, for NiFTy Tuesday.
All right. Thank you, Christine. So this week we were going to do Ute, which is a popular project on the AVAX chain. And actually we were going to do a couple other projects, but we couldn't gain access to get any real detailed information about the project. So we just decided to run a project that is pretty well known on the AVAX chain and that actually has information, because I think that's a great message to people. If you can't find out a lot about a project, they are only letting you find out more about it by actually buying an NFT. Okay, there's a couple instances where that would work, but for this instance, if you're getting access to a really exclusive group of people, if the NFTs are super expensive, very well known, people know that there's legitimate value to the project, then yeah, I'd say hey, if you want to join Bored Ape Yacht Club, there is information about it, but there's not a ton of information until you're actually in the project itself. So I would say, that's certainly a red flag to look out for. We want to be investing and using our money wisely in projects that are legitimate and not purposefully obfuscating information because either A, they don't have a lot going on with the project, B, it's a money grab, or maybe it's a little bit of both. Or maybe they do have something amazing and they don't want to give you the ingredients of the secret sauce. But usually projects aren't doing anything that groundbreaking that they can't actually share you details around, okay, do these NFTs have a staking mechanism? What are the rewards? Is there a native token? Every project should be able to divulge that information at the very least. So that's why I'm prefacing this. I think it's really important in general, but also in the times that we're in the crypto space. Transparency is just another part of the actual value of the project. If you think your stuff is so special that you can't share it at all, it might not be that special. There are projects that are really doing a lot of groundbreaking stuff, doing alpha testing. It makes sense, but in general, you can share some details about the project. You can let people into your Discord, have them ask questions. And that's one of the reasons we chose Oopa. Very similar-ish design to Utes. Let me get in here. Let me connect my wallet's connected. So it's an NFT series. They started with Avalanche Party Animals in 2021. So in this regard, the project does extend a little bit before Utes. And they're for Party Mansion Studios. You can see at the bottom here. And they have a bunch of other projects. They have Small Farms, Avalanche Party Animals, which were, let me pull this up on JPEGs. It was these little red furry guys with sunglasses. And it's still a collection. It was 10,000 NFTs minted. And basically they wanted to update their collection. And so at the time, a few other projects were doing this as well. They did a burn and mint scenario where they burned their original APAs for Oopas. So let me pull up APA. And so they extended that to February of 2023, I think. So they're not allowing people to burn anymore, but they were able to burn for a good while. So that project had been running for a while. So it was really cool design, fun. They had a lot of recognition online and in crypto Twitter. And I'm sure you've seen some pictures of these guys, cool party animal guys, all unique NFTs with different rarities. Then they burned for, let's pull up the more detailed, refined look of classically Oopas. You have to type it into all caps on JPEGs usually. And what's interesting is these are customizable NFTs. So I went to Ooapparel. This is where you can buy different effects to customize your Oopa with. Sunglasses, the clothing, it's really stylized versions. And with this project, you can earn credits, Oopa credits. Let me go to my staking. It's a pretty clean design. I have my one Oopa staked. The more traits that you have, the higher percentage of Oopa credits you get. So I can claim. They have a nice claim all function. And their website just works really well. The community is actually very welcoming. They're really nice people. They are out of Germany. And they do have more going on with the project. It's not an extremely complex project right now, besides all the different traits. And you can win shopping bags too, to later sell those traits on the market. And so they do have more to expand this Oopa universe, which I think is important because it's a really cool project with a great design. I think they could really make an interesting game out of this project. And they're a legitimate, wholehearted community of developers, and they're not trying to scam anybody. There's not really any sketchiness with this community. You can start off getting an OOP, a blank one, an Oopa, and expand, get more traits, win shopping bags. I think they can definitely go deeper though. But at the entrance price of less than 2 AVAX, I think it's worth buying an Oopa and seeing how the project evolves. They say they are building a Minecraft world with a developer, Wrath Tank, and a couple of the Oopa devs. And I was speaking with the devs in their Discord the other day, and they said they have a lot more that they're working on that they didn't want to share, which is understandable. I mean, we're talking about things that you can share and that you shouldn't share because sometimes the timing isn't right. But it's a really supported project. There's some great concept art. And similarly with Bored Ape Yacht Club, and I believe Utes does this too, you can use your Oopa NFT however you want. So you can take that art and use it, you own it, and it's all completely unique. And you can also customize that Oopa. You can buy different traits to customize it based on how you're feeling, and all of these traits have a liquid marketplace. The more Oopas you have staked, the more shopping bags, the more customization, the more items you can sell, buy, resell. So there is some liquidity that you can get out of this project. I look forward to more from the project, and hopefully maybe they can even introduce another, like a liquidity pool or another staking mechanism where they can even have a token that has liquidity. Because right now, Oopa credits or Oopa cash does not have liquidity. But those are just a few of my thoughts. And I just really like the design of this project. The people are good. They seem like good people in the project. And that's really a few of the main things that we look out for. And there was information about it, which that's really important too. You know, we want to do our due diligence. And before I go, they do have a casino where you can use some of your tokens, your credits, and spin for traits. So depending on the traits that you have, you can get access to different DAOs. And these DAOs, I'm sure they have their own reward systems too. A couple of my friends in crypto, they're in the Bake DAO. I don't have any of the traits to get that, but they're a really nice community too. And it's really about community for this project. So DAOs and sub DAOs.
I agree. And I think one thing about the Oompa project that I think people need to know is that the APA party animals have been around for quite some time. I know on their Twitter, they often encounter the confrontation that Oompas were scammed from youths. But once you look at the project, you realize that the APA party animals have been around for quite some time. So they've been in the space for a while. And I like what they're doing right now with the style mechanism. And although the list price for the character enhancements, I noticed it's not bad. It's pretty decently priced as far as the list price for those, I think 0.35 AVAX. But in the Discord, they're constantly doing giveaways and Twitter opportunities, meme opportunities to earn credits for additional styling. And doing this kind of in the market we're in, I think was quite genius because it allows their branding to really explode, to allowing their holders to take part in these giveaways and have fun with the project and their NFT. So I thought that was very smart. And although, like you were saying, building things out do take time, I like how they're using these shopping bags, the credits, to keep their community engaged throughout the build time. So I noticed that I hopped into a couple of their community chats and agree, the team is very welcoming, very open. And I like that they're utilizing this to slowly build out without rushing too much. So I agree, this project has quite potential with it. And I picked up a clean slate Oopa. So now I've got to get, character to it. So yeah, I would say all together, this project is definitely one take a peek at. It's fun. It's not too over complex right now. And I look forward to maybe rounding back to this project as it evolves.
Absolutely. Yeah, their community is engaged, and they are giving a lot of opportunities to be active in the community too. They have multiple calls a week, multiple opportunities for giveaways, and ways to win shopping bags too. So they're not just idly playing this game. You know, I think they can obviously gamify it more, but they're still giving members opportunity to get some liquidity out of the project, or just, keep them engaged.
Even when you go in their Discord is very clean, very tidy, yes, very simple. And community when it comes to NFT projects is another very important aspect of it. a lot of projects. As we roll into Kaspa and kind of taking a look at that project, we took a look at their community as well. And it's just interesting to see how projects support either tons of ideas happening all at once and can they actually maintain them, or keeping it very simple and doing things well the first time around. So, and I think Oopa's got that down.
Well said.
All
Yeah.
right, Ambrosia, I'll see you for the next report, and we will bring up Pepe and Sloth and Trill, and we're going to take a look at Kaspa. And I'll hand it over to you guys.
All right, so this week we ran through Kaspa, and Kaspa is very interesting because it has a lot of traction in the crypto space right now. There's a lot of attention on it. TA people, investors are looking at it. I'd be careful. I'll explain why, but I'll be careful to say what type of investor is looking at Kaspa for the long term. In my assessment, just generally speaking, it seems that Kaspa is a pump and dump currently for miners. And that's obviously going to draw some angry voices in the space, already has from some of our research that we put out. But the reason that I say that is Kaspa's been around for a little while. And basically, the reason that it's gaining so much attention is because it's a mineable, cryptocurrency coin that you can use GPU, ASIC miners to mine it. There's not really anything else profitable right now for GPU miners in terms of a more long-term outlook. I think it's about 70% of the token has been mined. So what I suspect is that people mining the token are holding the supply. And so obviously coin goes up, that's basically it. A lot of the pushback that they will bring, and they have brought with some of our research that we put out, just preliminary stuff on Twitter, the pushback is like, well, it's fast, it's in their value proposition. So if you go to About Kaspa page, you'll see solving the trilemma. And if you want to dive more deeply into it, you can look at their white paper. But essentially what's happening is, in my view, in terms of the just value proposition, like what value does this token bring to the crypto space? I don't see that, fast confirmations, high throughput, and mining decentralization are necessarily problems. Okay. And the reason that I say that, right, one person that pushed back on the research on our Twitter account was like, oh, you don't see decentralization as a problem, or I'm sorry, centralization as a problem. And it's like, well, obviously that is a problem, but nothing is truly decentralized. Okay. There's always a way. It's not necessarily a feasible way, but that, Bitcoin can't, they're like a 51% attack is something that is possible. It's just not practical. So there's going to be shortcomings for every single protocol that we assess in the space. And if we're just looking at Kaspa in terms of, okay, like the value proposition, like I stated, fast confirmations, high throughput, and mining decentralization, right? That's apparently the trilemma that they are communicating to the marketplace that they're solving. Okay, well, that only makes sense if you think that the speed of Bitcoin is too slow. And what I mean by that is there's nothing wrong with Bitcoin in the current value proposition. Okay, because value propositions can and do change, right? Whether it's for businesses or for if you're assessing an investment for the long term. And in crypto, that could be like a year or 6 months, But realistically, if you're assessing the investment to get into to hold long term, you have to understand that the miners are controlling the supply right now and that they'll likely dump. And if we look at things like Litecoin, that improved upon Bitcoin, supposedly, like making it faster and all these things that they said would make it better for the marketplace, no one really cares. Fast confirmations and fast transactions don't matter for Bitcoin because when Bitcoin first started, it was a peer-to-peer money, right? But that's obviously not what it is. You can't use Bitcoin as a source of money. You can use it as a store of value, most likely. I mean, we'll find out. Maybe it goes to zero one day. I don't think that that's going to be the case, but it could, right? Highly unlikely. But if we're assessing investments for like, what is the value that they really offer? Well, it's a store of value, really. So does it matter that transactions are slow if you're using it as a store of value? I don't see that at all. So the fast confirmations, I would put an X on that one. Like Kaspa's not really solving anything in terms of, the new marketplace. And they're talking about such as e-commerce. Okay, so like how exactly are they going to, for Kaspa, offer e-commerce like with Kas token? It's kind of just absurd. Like they're saying like, yeah, this is true until you get to something like that. Like they're solving the problem for e-commerce. Bitcoin's been out since like 2009. How many e-commerce platforms are offering payments in Bitcoin, right? And then, the other thing is like Lightning Network. Okay. And then there's the criticism that like, well, Lightning Network, it's generally centralized right now. And it's like, yeah, but it could become more decentralized and likely will become more decentralized over time. So it's not just like because they're doing this now, it doesn't mean that value, liquidity is going to move from Bitcoin and these other assets because it's a shiny new object, right? Like that's a major problem that people have in the space. It's like, oh, shiny object syndrome, right? Ooh, it's shiny. I'm going to go and get into it, right? And then we go to the high throughput. Is that really solving anything? I don't think so. I mean, I think Bitcoin's doing a fine job the way that it is. Institutional investors are going to be hesitant to get into something like Kaspa because it hasn't proven itself. In theory, all these security issues, and again, Trill can get into this in a bit, but in theory, these security issues might improve on the security, but I feel like the security of Bitcoin is pretty good as is, right? So like, is it necessary what they're doing? And if so, why? Why is it so necessary? You have to prove that to the marketplace. You can't come into the marketplace with an asset or a product or service, but in this case, it's an asset, right? You can't come into the marketplace and convince people that GoStag is necessary. Like, okay, why is it necessary? Because of the scalability and stuff like that. Okay, but if we're talking about in the sense of a store of value, which Kaspa is basically the same thing as Bitcoin in the general sense, right? All they've done is just improve the technology. But did that work in past iterations of Bitcoin forks? Not really. And then like if you look at the chart of Litecoin compared to Bitcoin, it's not as competitive, I guess we could say, as you would think it is with all these supposed improvements. So I think that we're going to see something like that with Kaspa. And again, the mining decentralization, I think that that's the most legitimate point, like that stands out or like the most prominent argument that they have. Sure, I get that. But at the same time, how much decentralization is necessary versus like how much can be given away to make it restore that balance between complete or we need as much decentralization as possible versus like we can have elements of decentralization and elements of centralization in order for the product or service to work in a productive manner, if that makes sense. So yeah, I mean, these are just like, this is a very cursory overview, but this is essentially like a little mini seminar in how you should be assessing these investments, right? Because a lot of the times it's the shiny object syndrome, and there's a lot of that in crypto, right? And if you can stay out of that and realize like, okay, like there are some glaring issues with this. And I'm not saying that this coin isn't going to double or triple or quadruple in market cap, but as an investor, you only have so much capital, even if you're a billionaire, right? You only have so much. Like, where are you going to put your focus and attention in your investments? Or are you just going to buy every single coin in existence? Can't all be like Sloth that has one of every coin, like Space Cowboy says in the server, But that's essentially it. So like, really, when a project puts out their value proposition, is it really like it says solving the trilemma? Well, is this trilemma really a trilemma, or are they just manufacturing one and being like, we do this stuff better? Yeah, you do this stuff better, but is doing it better necessary? Is it a need, want, or significant desire in the marketplace? Because that's what you should be doing as a businessman or woman or whatever you are. If you're coming from the business perspective, you need to figure out, is this a need, want, or desire that fulfills a void in the current marketplace? If it doesn't do that, then we're on a hype train. And that's how I feel CAS is. Would it be nice to get in at the beginning? Yeah, sure. I mean, I get into projects like that, but I'm not long-term outlook. I'm not trying to hold the bag on that kind of stuff. I'll de-risk, ROA, take some profit. And if I really think, okay, this could keep going, then I'll hold a little moon boy bag. But like, that's more of like the trading side or like the practical capital management side of things. But just raw overview, I'm not seeing it. And I think Trill can get into that a little bit more in a bit.
We can go over some of the analytical stuff first and just share my screen here. I mean, there's not really a ton to go off of. I mean, because a lot of the Nansen and other analytic platforms, they don't have the Kaspa platform integrated. So we're just kind of going off what we had from Sentiment. So we can kind of see the all-time price of the coin, right? So we had an all-time high, about 5 cents, so 30% drop in the high. And then the when it launched back May of last year, we had 0.000. Obviously would have been the ideal time to get in. But yeah, I think it's kind of for its current full cycle and kind of on downtrend. I mean, as we've seen, in the past, every coin kind of goes through the same cycle. It has an initial hump and the hype, and it started going up from the lows to highs. So I don't really see a ton of growth coming, at least price wise, on this anytime soon. I'm sure, once we hit full-blown bull, it definitely has some room to grow. I think the hype is kind of worn off of it. We see the market cap sitting at about 738 million, and then I think at the peak we hit about 1 billion we can see a pretty significant drop in the volume here. When it was at its peak here back in August, hit over almost 60 million, and now it's down 75% down to 14, 15 million in the daily volume. So here we can see the total coin supply. So the max is 0.7, total right now is 20.3 billion. And so the current block reward is 185 CAS per block month. And so the halving is a little bit different than, say Bitcoin or Litecoin, which they have a 4-year cycle, right? So for CAS, it's actually on a monthly cycle. So the next reward reduction is coming up in just about a week, September 6th, and then it's getting reduced to 174 from 185. So I think it's about a 5.6% reward reduction every month. So the emission schedule is a lot more aggressive than other networks like Bitcoin and Litecoin. And we can actually see the full emission schedule here. So, right, it started out May 2022. Initial rewards were 4 free per block mined. And then if we go to the last reward reduction, which is October 2056, so it's only 34 years away when it's finally reduced to 0 and every CAS has been mined. So that's definitely something to keep in mind with, it's a little more revolutionary than Bitcoin or a lot of the other proof of work. But one good thing to note is the address distribution is actually pretty good. I mean, so for the top 100, for instance, 35% of the supply is owned by the top 100, where we see a lot of these smaller protocols where we got 95% of the supply is owned by just the top 100 or less. So in that regard, they do have pretty good distribution. As you can see, they have different categories, right? So there has been some good growth as far as the distribution. I mean, we see the smaller, anyone with 0 to 100 coins had some growth compared to some of the whales. So I'm just seeing that distribution of growing more. Yeah, there's not really nothing else to go over as far as the analytical stuff. So you can see here that just kind of shows the latest blocks being mined and then the transactions in real time. But other than that, there's not a whole lot. So yeah, I mean, personally, I wouldn't put any money into it. Obviously not financial advice, but knowing what I know from previous cycles, I don't think this thing has any more room to grow. Yeah, that's pretty much all I got. So if Drill wants to go over the more technical aspects of the coin.
I'll talk about like kind of basically what Pepe said, and then a little bit what Stag does, and basically kind of just touch on what Pepe said because there really isn't much about the coin in the first place. Kaspa is a proof of work. Their gimmick is that they're addressing scalability or throughput of Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is as slow as it is to kind of maintain its security. And Kaspa is kind of like if you were to increase that throughput, or just on regular Bitcoin's chain, that would end up harming Bitcoin because on Bitcoin, it's called orphan blocks. Sometimes it creates parallel chains. Let's say someone mines a Bitcoin block at the exact same time. Sometimes there may be 2 chains at exact same time because Bitcoin operates on something called the longest chain rule. And what happens is those 2 chains will be the longest chain at that exact same time. And they'll continue being mined on up until one chain ends up becoming longer, faster than the other. And then that chain obviously becomes the longest chain and is the real chain. The parallel or orphan block is kind of just thrown away. Kaspa is kind of with the DAG structure. There's, those parallel blocks are incorporated into the entire chain. But the main things at Kaspa, I guess, for the technical points. So this is kind of like how a DAG would look. A lot of blocks or one block would have multiple predecessors. So you have something called the future, the past, and anicones is kind of the important parts. So these are basically the blocks that are not the future or past. They're the blocks that are connected to the future or past. So with Kaspa, there's something called the Phantom protocol, but Kaspa uses the DOS-DAG protocol, which is a generalization of Phantom. And basically, this is kind of like referred to as a K cluster. So in terms of like security, because parallel blocks can be added with Kaspa, and sometimes those parallel blocks are malicious blocks. So this anicone feature is part of the security portion of Kaspa because, an attacker might try and add bad blocks and have like 10 anicones, but if the network is set to only have 3 or 4, you can identify a bad block that way. Or another thing about Kaspa, 70% of the token is already mined, and you can kind of see pretty soon, honestly, in the next year or two, all of it will be mined. There is also no other developments on top of Kaspa. Layer 2 support, they speak of there will be layer 2 or smart contracts, but there is nothing like in their white papers that kind of say how that would be implemented. There's 2 white papers, Phantom Protocol, GoStag, which is open source, and they say this was in works for about 8 years, dropped in 2021. And like Pepe said, Kaspa is it's very similar to They even say it themselves, like Kaspa or Ghostat is a generalization of Nakamoto consensus, which is in Bitcoin. And the reason they have this generalization as the first place is to address the scalability of Bitcoin. But as Pepe stated, is that, really an issue at this point in time. So there wasn't really much about Kaspa. They just kind of wanted to incorporate all blocks, or instead of having orphan blocks that are in Bitcoin, they just wanted to have all those blocks incorporated into the chain. We have zones called blue and red because it's known that there will be malicious blocks added. But the way GoStag even kind of works is it essentially still kind of follows the longest chain rule. It kind of addresses Bitcoin scalability. Like if you go through their paper, it's still kind of Bitcoin in a way. So it's not something completely different. And like what Pepe was stating, like the shiny object, they introduce it as this grand thing. Maybe they employed it a little bit earlier during that 8 years. Obviously, the shiny object might have been a little more shinier then. The issue that they're trying to address started trying to address it 8 years ago. Times change. That issue kind of isn't really an issue anymore. Pretty much what I have to say about Kaspa. We have 2 white papers, and there's NoStag protocol, where they also kind of compare to a couple other proof of works. There's Spectre in there, and then we have the kind of the Kaspa, which is honestly more so just more technical information. There really is no roadmap. So like Pepe was saying, this is kind of like a coin for miners. It's not like necessarily a coin for innovation, even though they introduced the project as kind of being something innovative. There isn't really any innovative yet. If you're a miner, seeing the hash rate and you're gonna kind of want to see your profitability, they do have this to calculate as a slide shown. We have decreasing value of the coin right now. I believe I did see in the white paper that they said they plan to increase the throughput of the network, which would then increase the hash rate and would then increase the cost of the mining. So that's also something you would have to look into. But yeah, that's pretty much all the cast.
Thank you so much, Trill. Pepe, do you have any final words on Kaspa before we move on to FA Friday and stablecoins?
Yeah, basically, I think Trill and I just ping pong back and forth, and then Sloth brought up on-chain data. It's looking very bearish overall in the next probably 6 months or so. But you got to take into account that everything's going to pump in the bull, whenever that is. So if that's next year, which I think it probably will be, I don't think it'll be later this year. Depends, on market conditions and stuff like that, geopolitics and all that. But I'm sure it'll pump, and then the cast people will be like, yeah, see, I told you our coin was going to pump. Yeah, but everything's going to pump. So there's definite factors that you have to take into, like Trill was just saying. Don't let that slip by if you're thinking about mining this. And Serrano was saying in the chat, it's there's a lot of factors to consider if you're going to mine this coin, or if you're going to trade it just on TA, whatever. That's probably your best bet, honestly, if you're going to get exposure to this. But I personally think that even in the bear right now, there's a lot better assets and value coming into the space that is going to pump much harder than CAS, and CAS likely will dump eventually. So that's pretty much a summary. Always focus on the value proposition of a project. If you don't see the obvious value, there probably isn't any, and they're just making an argument to buy my coin. Buy my coin, bro. You know what I mean? That's basically it.
Great. Thank you. So we will move on to FA Friday and stablecoins bridging traditional finance and cryptocurrency. And then I'll bring up GeForce as well, as we'll roll into the S&P and DXY. Over to you, Pepe.
I'm just going to break it down. It's kind of building off of CAS, right? And so this whole idea of P2P money, that problem is already solved essentially in the space, right? So the way that it's solved is with protocols in some cases like DAI, stablecoin, or Tether with their various stablecoins. They have multiple stablecoins. They have one that's pegged to the market price of gold. They have one that's pegged to the Mexican peso, actually. And they have the Chinese yuan, US dollar, obviously, and the euro. Okay, so the fact that they're into the Mexican peso and they offer exposure to that in the crypto space, it kind of lends to the idea that I think over time, especially with the competition in the stablecoin space, that we're going to see more fiat currencies entering crypto, What the timetable on that, who knows? But you could see that there's definitely further competition coming with PayPal launching their stablecoin and Coinbase making moves with Circle, which is a USDC. But essentially, P2P money, the problem's already solved. Bitcoin didn't solve that problem. Bitcoin solves other problems for sure, but Bitcoin did not solve the problem of P2P money at all. Like, you don't want to use a highly volatile asset in terms of money because that's already a problem with fiat currencies, right? And that's not to say that we won't see some sort of protocol or company that comes into the crypto space and solves that money problem. I think that the example that we did a couple of weeks ago with Tangible, partially backing the token with real estate and then paying out rental income to offer the yield on the stablecoin, in some sense, that is, in a more broad view, it's at least decreasing some of the inflation that we're exposed to with just holding fiat by itself, right? So I think another point is with BRICS, if BRICS does actually create a currency like they're saying they're going to, it sounds like they're going to back it with commodities. I think GeForce probably knows a little bit more about that. He's been keeping up with it a little more than I have. But first of all, we'll see how that pulls through because, yeah, they opened up membership in January, but a lot of these countries haven't accepted yet. So we'll see how that pans out. But if everyone joins that said that they wanted to join and put in applications, that's like a new OPEC right there because they control 80% of the supply of oil in the world. So if they do back a currency with oil, gold, a mixture of things, the money problem that we're seeing right now with fiat currencies isn't necessarily going to be a problem, maybe even in the short term. We'll see what happens. But I think crypto people, we have a bias, generally speaking, not all of us, but the general narrative is like crypto fixes the money problem. And it's like, not really. Like, in some ways it does, because obviously it's better to keep your stable coins in your wallet than it is in a bank because it's more under your control. And there's already partnerships that have been around a long time. I think it was like 2021. I dropped it in the server, but Deloitte got in partnership with Ava Labs, which is the parent organization or foundation of Avalanche, so AVAX, and they use that for federal and state emergency funding in the United States because it's obviously much faster than a bank, right? And banks are closed on the weekend. So if there's an emergency, there's an obvious use case there. So yeah, I mean, the fee problem is already fixed that Cass claims they solve, but I mean, that's already fixed with something like Avalanche, where you can move $1 million of USDT very cheaply, and maybe in some cases cheaper than a bank, certainly faster. So yeah, we have the write up on that. I think that's pretty much it on that. So John, if you want to fill in anything that I missed.
Yeah, you covered a lot. So I'll emphasize the BRICS because they made announcements this last week with their big conference in South Africa. They've invited several countries, Saudi Arabia, Iran, the UAE, and then also 10 African countries on top of all that. So yeah, as we posted in the server, that if they all joined that were invited, then 80% of the world's oil will be in that BRICS alliance, which I kind of dubbed the new OPEC. And I think Trev agrees with that this is the new OPEC, and they will need some sort of crypto, some sort of stable coin to transact everything. I would not imagine them not doing it, but that is going to take time. But they will back everything by the resources, commodities, gold, oil, of course, whatever resources they have. So it's interesting when they made that announcement, and I'm going to start out with a DXY chart first, is actually the dollar index went up. So on the screen here, you'll see I made a notation here that on Thursday, the big move up was the BRICS announcement, what they were going to do, what they were going to invite with the countries and things of that nature. And then next day, Friday, it even followed through. The dollar index was even up. It actually cleared. You'll see this yellow line here where it cleared the highs back in the end of May. The DXY just went down after that, but it also cleared this double top back at the end of June and the first part of July. So there's a lot of strength on the DXY. You look at this, there's a huge amount of strength, just keep going up, 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 and it could probably flatten out or even go higher. A lot of geopolitical news going on, especially what's going on with Russia and how they handled mutiny originator person. Just a lot of things going on there. But China has to deal with Russia. China's trying to be a legitimate economic power, and Russia, unfortunately, is kind of holding them back. At least those are my thoughts. I'm going to move on to the S&P. I usually start out with S&P, but because we're talking about BRICS and that, I thought I would start out with the DXY first. This is also the daily chart of the S&P 500. You'll see that I marked here on Thursday, it just missed the standard deviation line, which is this black line on Thursday by 8 points. It was just 8 points away, and then it fell back on Thursday. Basically, looking at news, the Fed speak this week, the speech that happened on Thursday, because they had not only was it Chairman Powell of the Federal Reserve Bank, but it was Lagarde from the EU Bank, and also the Japanese Fed governor was there as well. but you'll see what happened. It just fell back. What's interesting, though, is that the market did come down. The S&P 500 did come down. It hit the 2x standard deviation line last week. Right here at this point, I mentioned last time we talked that this point right here that I'm showing is halfway between the 2x lower band and the 3x lower band, that middle point. And then it just went straight up, almost hit the standard deviation line again. Like I said, missed by 8 points. Then it dropped back down. So this week, I'm very interested to see what's going to happen. I do leave some old channel lines that I've drawn all the way back in May. And I leave these on my chart because this is interesting. This bottom channel line keeps going up, up, up. If you continue to draw, it's that lower point right here that we had last week. And then on Friday, it dropped back down to it and then went back up. So I'm looking at this could be a possible support line. It has to be proven a little bit more besides just the point on last Friday and this Friday right here. But if the market keeps going up off of that, then it will turn into support. We'll have to see on that point. So that is all I have for this week. And I'll turn it back over to Christine.
As a member of DeFi-Logic, you can review the Daily Dose forum where we publish analysis on various research topics. Also, DeFi-Logic members interested in alpha testing our eSpot trading indicator and new XRP trading strategy developed by Cryptic. The service is free until we launch. Also, DeFi-Logic is a premium service for members that join prior to the public launch. As an early member, you will gain free lifetime access to the server and steep discounts on other products and services we develop in the future. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you at 1 p.m. Mountain Time next week. Cheers, friends. Join us next week in Discord for Symposium Sunday at DeFiLogic.com.